The Voidborne devoured galaxies, believing they would conquer all, until humanity's adaptation shocked them.
The grav wrench strained, its magnetic field humming against the warped bulkhead. Jaxen Vance cursed under his breath, knuckles white as he wrestled with the tool. A siren wailed, a high-pitched shriek warning of a breach escalating from minor to critical. 30 seconds, maybe less, before the void hammer started shedding atmosphere. This wasn't just a repair, it was a battle against the unforgiving void. "Come on, you stubborn piece of scrap," he grunted, forcing the wrench into a tighter grip on the protesting alloy. The metal groaned in a dying lament. Sweat beaded on his forehead, a single drop sizzling as it hit a sparking panel. The mining freighter shivered around him, a deep, resonant tremor that spoke of structural fatigue and impending disaster. "Jax, Captain Thorne wants a report on this mess." Ilara Reese, his junior engineer, appeared at the hatchway, her voice thin, laced with barely contained dread. Jax didn't spare her a glance. "Tell Captain Thorne, if he doesn't stop riding my ass, I'll personally ensure this bucket rusts in orbit." The damaged plating, buckled by an unknown impact, finally yielded to the wrench's will, its edges clamping tighter. A grunt of satisfaction escaped him. Ilara, wise enough to recognize the sign of a man deep in his element, quickly retreated. Everyone on the Voidhammer knew. When Jaxen Vance was locked in with the engines, you left him to it. With a final sharp twist, the wrench clicked. A hiss of escaping air. Then the pressure readings dropped, stabilizing from alarming red to a cautious yellow. Jax let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Good enough," he muttered, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that had seen better centuries. He stretched, his spine popping in a series of satisfying cracks. At 39, the weight of his years, compounded by 2 decades in Earth's brutal colony wars, felt heavier than the grav wrench. His face, etched with countless battles against man and machine, rarely betrayed a single emotion. "AI, ETA to Beacon 12. Current trajectory predicts arrival in approximately 18 standard hours, assuming no further hull integrity compromises." The AI's subtly dry tone was not lost on Jax. Smart-ass computer. He reached for his cold coffee. He drank it anyway. Caffeine was caffeine. The familiar, almost imperceptible shift in the ship's gravity signaled a minor course correction, routine for this region. Humanity had only recently joined the wider galactic community, invited in by the Ether Core after their primitive faster-than-light tests were detected. Newcomers meant undesirable routes, dangerous mining contracts, the galaxy's grunt work. Jax preferred it. Less bureaucracy, more raw, honest labor. Out here, competence mattered more than protocol. Suddenly, alarms blared. An insistent crimson pulse flooded the engine room. "Now what?" Jax growled, reaching for his tool belt. Probably another false alarm from Captain Thorne, a man whose paranoia was legendary. The engine room door hissed open. Ilara stumbled in, face ashen, eyes wide with terror. "Jax, they're on the bridge. They just tore through. Captain Thorne and Naomi Kael. They're gone." Her voice dissolved into a strangled gasp as the comm system crackled to life, broadcasting chaos across the ship, screams, the tearing of metal, and a deep, wet, guttural roar that vibrated through Jax's very bones. Then silence, thick and suffocating. Jax gripped Ilara's shoulders. "Who? Pirates?" "No, not pirates." Ilara shuddered, tears welling. They appeared. Not teleporting, but they ripped through the hull. And Naomi, They just consumed her, like she was just fuel.
Jax released her, his mind racing. Secure this section. Lock down the door behind me. He snatched his grav wrench, a 5-pound block of high-density alloy, his constant companion, and a portable cutting torch. "You're going up there?" Ilara whispered, disbelief etched on her face. "Someone has to understand what the hell we're up against." Jax strapped the torch to his hip. "If I'm not back in 15, initiate engine overload and get to the escape pods." Before Ilara could argue, he was gone, slipping into the crimson-lit corridor. The ship felt wrong. The familiar hums of machinery were replaced by an eerie silence, punctuated by wet, distant thumps and a disturbing scraping sound. Jax moved cautiously, his hand on his pistol towards the bridge. He stopped at a viewport, peering out. The scene outside stole his breath. A Dravok warship, its bone-white hull and prominent tusks a symbol of galactic might, wasn't being outmaneuvered, it was being devoured. Not by other ships, but by hulking, bioorganic masses of obsidian black chitin pulsating with dark energy. These weren't vessels built in shipyards. They were grown, like monstrous, predatory leviathans. Razor-sharp protrusions tore through the Dravok shields as if they were tissue. One of these horrors slammed into the Dravok warship, literally ripping a massive hole in its side, expelling a cloud of atmosphere and debris, including Dravok bodies, into the void. "Holy shit," Jax breathed. The Voidhammer had stumbled into the middle of an entirely new kind of war. He reached the bridge access. The reinforced security door hadn't been blasted open, it had been melted and peeled back like damp paper. A grotesque stench hit him first. Copper and ozone, mixed with something sickeningly sweet and metallic that churned his stomach. Captain Thorne lay just inside, or what remained. His upper torso was gone, ripped clean off, the exposed flesh already dissolving into a viscous, foul ichor. Naomi Kael was sprawled over her console, but her body was disturbingly distended. Skin stretched, taut and translucent, revealing something writhing underneath. Her eyes, wide with terror, were now completely black, glistening with an unnatural fluid. A movement caught Jack's eye. A figure stood by the main viewport. It wasn't shifting or blurring like smoke. It was bulking. Its form grew, limbs thickening, chitinous plates erupting from its skin. It turned, revealing a head that was less a face than a predatory mask of hardened bone and multifaceted eyes, glowing with cold, calculating intelligence. This was no ethereal demon. This was a creature of immense, brutal physicality, a Voidborne. It lunged with impossible speed. Pure instinct, honed in countless battles, saved Jax. He swung the grav wrench in a wide, desperate arc, connecting solidly with what should have been the creature's skull. The impact was sickeningly real. The entity shrieked, a sound like grinding stone and tearing metal that lanced directly into Jack's brain, a spike of ice. It staggered back, its head twisting at an unnatural angle. Viscous black-green fluid leaked from the impact point, sizzling into acrid smoke before it hit the deck.
Jax pressed his advantage, swinging again, connecting with what approximated a shoulder. The blow sent it reeling into a console. Jax spotted Captain Thorne's sidearm on the floor. He dove, rolled, and came up firing. The first shot sparked harmlessly off its hardened hide. The second found its mark in one of its multifaceted eyes. The creature convulsed, its body ripping itself apart as if consumed from within, collapsing into a heap of dissolving putrid flesh and chitin. A moment later, only a black, oily stain remained. "What in the actual hell?" Jax panted, scanning the empty bridge. He approached the command console, careful to avoid Naomi's horrifying remains, and activated the emergency comms. "This is Engineering Officer Jaxen Vance. Captain Thorne and Navigation Officer Kael are dead. We have been boarded by unknown hostile entities. AI identification. The AI ship's response was slow, distorted. Entities match no known classification. Tentatively established as Voidborne. Threat level maximum. Recommended action, immediate evacuation. Jax stared out the viewport. The Dravok warship was being torn apart by the monstrous Voidborne vessels. More hulking humanoids, some even larger than the one he'd just fought, were breaching the Dravok ship's hull, ripping their way inside. Jax harbored little love for the arrogant Dravok, but he understood this was a threat beyond species. If the Voidborne could rip through a Dravok battlecruiser like butter, no one was safe. AI, plot an escape vector. Maximum burn once we're clear. Unable to comply. Navigational systems damaged. Propulsion limited to maneuvering thrusters only. Jax slammed his fist on the console. Of course! He studied the tactical display, watching the Dravok's increasingly desperate maneuvers. An insane, suicidal idea formed, but it was better than waiting to be consumed. AI, can we maneuver alongside the Dravok warship within docking range? Affirmative. Maneuvering thrusters operational. Warning. Close approach to active combat zone not recommended. Just do it, he snarled. He activated the ship-wide comms. Ilara, meet me in Airlock 3. Bring the portable demo charges from Cargo Bay 6. He knew the odds, but he'd be damned if he died cowering. If these things wanted a fight, he'd give them one they wouldn't soon forget. The Voidhammer, a lumbering mining ship, wasn't built for combat. Its hull groaned in protest as Jax piloted it with surprising agility alongside the massive Dravok warship. Through the viewport, the battle raged. Dravok warriors, armored and disciplined, fighting desperately against the hulking Voidborne, losing ground with every passing second. "This is completely insane, Jax," Ilara exclaimed, clutching a duffel bag filled with mining explosives. "The Dravok won't let us dock. They'll blast us out of the sky." "They're a bit preoccupied at the moment," Jax retorted, his eyes glued to the tactical display. "Besides, our clamps aren't compatible. We're improvising."
The Voidhammer shuddered as debris from the battle impacted its hull. Jax expertly guided their vessel towards a relatively intact section of the Dravok ship, bringing them within 20 meters of an alien airlock. "Perfect," he muttered. "Ilara, brace yourself. This is going to be rough." He activated the mining ship's exterior maintenance arms, heavy-duty mechanical limbs designed for handling massive ore containers. With meticulous precision, he manipulated them to grasp the edges of the Dravok airlock. "What are you doing?" Alara's eyes were wide. "Making a door." Jax increased power to the arms. Metal shrieked as the incompatible systems were forced together. The ship's AI blared warnings about structural integrity, warnings Jax utterly ignored. With a final groan, the Voidhammer's airlock sealed, albeit imperfectly, against the Dravok vessel. It would hold atmosphere, barely. Jax snatched the duffel bag from Ilara. "Stay here. Keep the ship ready for immediate detachment. If things go sideways, don't wait." "You're actually going in there alone?" Alara's voice cracked. "That's suicide." "Probably," he conceded, hefting his grav wrench. "But waiting to die isn't my style." He strapped the wrench to his belt, a heavy, comforting weight, and headed for the airlock. The makeshift connection held. Jax emerged into the Dravok ship's corridor, instantly assaulted by the cacophony of battle. Energy weapon discharges, the tearing of metal, and the guttural roars of the Voidborne. The Dravok ship was a charnel house. Bodies of reptilian warriors lay scattered, their forms torn open or twisted into impossible shapes. The survivors, though fighting with disciplined ferocity, were clearly overwhelmed by the sheer power and relentless aggression of their new enemies. Jax moved swiftly, utilizing the debris for cover. He planted small explosive charges at key junctions, creating choke points, traps designed to funnel the Voidborne. The mining explosives weren't designed for combat, but their concussive force would disrupt anything caught in the blast. The first Voidborne he encountered was monstrous, feasting on a fallen Dravok warrior, its massive jaws tearing chunks from the alien's chest cavity. Jax didn't hesitate. He fired 3 rounds from Captain Thorne's recovered pistol into its back. The creature convulsed, a wet, tearing shriek escaping its form as it dissolved into a pool of black ichor and chitinous fragments. "They bleed," he muttered, a grim satisfaction in his voice. "That's something." He pressed on, dispatching Voidborne when necessary, setting more traps. His methods were brutal, pragmatic, utterly unorthodox compared to the Dravok's rigid combat doctrine. He used the environment, exposed wiring, pressure points, anything he could leverage. The Voidborne, accustomed to direct, brutal efficiency, seemed momentarily confused by his unpredictability. As he neared the bridge, resistance intensified. Voidborne crashed through bulkheads, lunging from unexpected angles. Jax moved, fired, swung his grav wrench when they got too close. The pistol eventually ran dry, but the wrench never needed reloading. The bridge entrance was barricaded with heavy metal barriers. Jax approached cautiously. "Human engineering officer Jaxen Vance from the mining vessel Voidhammer. I'm here to help."
A tense silence. Then, a section of the barrier retracted, just enough to admit one man. Jax slipped through, finding himself surrounded by Dravok warriors, their formidable weapon arrays locked on his chest. At the center of the bridge stood the tallest Dravok Jax had ever seen, High General Vorlag Draken. Nearly 8 feet of armored reptilian warrior, scales a deep green, scarred from countless battles. One tusk was broken short, giving his fearsome visage an even more savage asymmetry. "A human!" Draken's voice was a deep rumble that vibrated through Jax's chest. "You dare board a Dravok warship? A scavenger, hoping to claim spoils." Jax lowered his grav wrench, but didn't release it. "If I wanted salvage, I'd have waited until you were all dead. I came because we face the same enemy." Draken narrowed his vertical pupils. "I am War Commander Vorlag Draken. Identify yourself properly, human." "Jaxen Vance, engineering officer. And if you want to live long enough for formal introductions, you might want to hear what I have to say about those things out there." A ripple of outrage swept through the Dravok officers, but Draken raised a clawed hand for silence. "Speak, then." Jax quickly assessed the tactical situation displayed on the bridge consoles. "Your ship is being systematically overrun. These Voidborne don't phase. They tear through solid matter. But they have to physically breach, and that initial assault leaves them momentarily disoriented. I've killed several. They dissolve in ichor when fatally damaged. They adapt fast. You need to hit them before they learn your patterns." "We are aware of their physical limitations," Draken said stiffly. "We are attempting to capture specimens for analysis." Jax barked a humorless laugh. "Capture? They're tearing your warriors apart, and you're trying to take prisoners? No wonder you're losing." A young Dravok officer stepped forward aggressively. "How dare a maintenance ape?" "Silence!" Draken's roar cut him off. He studied Jax with a newfound intensity. "You have a strategic assessment, human?" Jax pointed to the ship's schematic. "They're concentrating around your engine core and life support. Classic strategy. Control the critical systems, the rest falls. You need to change the battlefield. Vent specific decks to space. Force them into corridors where they can't simply tear through walls without exposing themselves to vacuum." "Our warriors still occupy those sections," another officer protested. "Sacrifice them," Jax said bluntly. "They're dead. Once you've herded these things, hit them with concentrated fire. I've got mining explosives. We can detonate them remotely in the choke points." The bridge fell silent. The Dravok stared, their reptilian features unreadable to human eyes. Finally, Draken spoke.
You propose we abandon our brothers to strengthen our strategic position?
I propose you stop dying by the rulebook, Jax retorted. These things don't care about your warrior traditions or battle protocols. They're winning because they don't fight fair. Before Draken could respond, alarms blared. A section of the bridge wall warped inwards with a sickening crack, and 3 hulking Voidborne tore their way through, their chitinous forms solidifying as they attacked the nearest Dravok officers. Jax moved without hesitation. He hurled himself at the nearest entity, grav wrench swinging in a lethal arc. The impact sent it reeling back, its thick hide groaning. The Dravok froze, momentarily stunned by his reckless charge. "Shoot them while they're solid," Jax roared, ducking under a swipe from bladed claws that gouged deep furrows in the metal wall behind him. Draken reacted first, firing his energy weapon into the second Voidborne. The blast caught it mid-lunge, causing it to explode in a shower of black achre and chitin fragments. The Dravok warriors followed, concentrating fire on the third. Jax finished his opponent with a brutal overhead swing that shattered whatever passed for its skull. As it dissolved, he turned to find Draken watching him with an unreadable expression. "Your strategy," Draken said, his voice quiet. "Implement it." They fought their way through the ship's corridors, a strange alliance of Dravok warriors and 1 human engineer. Jax's plan worked. Specific decks were vented to space, forcing the Voidborne into predictable paths where they were met with concentrated Dravok fire and human explosive traps. The Dravok, accustomed to rigid formations, observed Jax's unorthodox fighting style with a mixture of disgust and reluctant admiration. He used maintenance ducts, exposed wiring, anything that offered an advantage. The Voidborne, bred for efficiency, seemed confused by his unpredictable movements, easily anticipating the Dravok textbook maneuvers, but stumbling against Jax's chaotic pragmatism. During one particularly brutal engagement, Jax and Draken were separated from the main force. Cornered by a swarm of Voidborne, they fought back to back. Draken wielded his ceremonial energy blade with millennia of Dravok martial discipline. Jax, fueled by raw instinct, had fashioned a makeshift flamethrower from hydraulic fluid and his cutting torch, engulfing Voidborne in searing blue-white fire that seemed to disrupt their incredibly fast regeneration. Those that survived the flames met his wrench or his boot. "You fight without honor," Draken observed during a brief lull, his breath ragged. "Yet, effectively." Jax snorted, reloading his salvaged Dravok pistol. "Honor is a luxury for those who expect to live through the battle." They reached the engine core to find the Voidborne not building a gateway, but attempting to assimilate it into some kind of grotesque biomechanical growth. Pulsing, sickly green energy swirled around the faster-than-light drive, warping reality into a monstrous, organic mass. "Ether preserve us," Draken whispered. "They are turning it into a hive node." Jax assessed the situation quickly. "We need to disrupt that growth pattern, not just kill the Voidborne, but break whatever they're building." He repositioned his remaining explosives, setting them to detonate in a precise sequence designed to interrupt the organic growth without destroying the core itself. "This will damage your FTL drive," he warned Draken. "If the alternative is becoming a birthing ground for these abominations, I accept the cost." The detonation was successful. The Voidborne in the chamber were consumed by the blast, their organic growth pattern disrupted. But as Draken acknowledged, the cost was high. The Dravok ship's FTL drive was critically damaged, leaving them stranded in hostile space with only conventional engines. As emergency systems engaged, Draken received a galaxy-wide transmission from the Ether Core. The Voidborne were attacking throughout the galaxy. All warriors were being called to defend civilization. With the FTL drive damaged, the Dravok ship limped towards the nearest hub station. The hub station was chaos. Ships from a dozen species docked haphazardly, emergency protocols overriding normal traffic control. The Ether Core had established an emergency war council, its holographic avatar hovering over the central meeting chamber. Dravok leadership, based on their warrior heritage, was assigned command.
but initial reports indicated their deployments had been disastrous. The Voidborne's ability to quickly learn and adapt rendered traditional Dravok tactics useless. Jax's breaking protocol brought Jax before the Council. He demonstrated human combat tactics against recorded Voidborne encounters. The Council, composed of ancient, cautious species like the gaseous Tellar and the methodical Scar, was dismissive. They focused on containment and study. Jax, however, advocated immediate, overwhelming violence. He said, "These things feed on hesitation. Hit fast, hit hard, and burn the bodies." His demonstration highlighted the Voidborne's difficulty predicting chaotic, aggressive movements, precisely how humans, evolving on a violent world, naturally fought.
The High Command remained unconvinced until Drakon spoke. "I have witnessed this human's methods firsthand. They are unorthodox, but effective. The Voidborne struggle to counter his unpredictability." Against all galactic tradition, the Aether created a human combat division, with Jax appointed as liaison to the Dravok. Many Dravok officers were outraged, but Drakon's influence silenced the dissent. Thus began the first phase of galactic resistance, with humanity taking an unexpectedly central role. As the war intensified, Jax's methods proved brutally effective. Human ships, retrofitted mining vessels, and cargo haulers, armed with improvised weapons, achieved victory rates that astonished the Galactic Council. Jax became a reluctant figurehead, uncomfortable with recognition, but unwilling to back down. The Aether's analysis revealed something profound. The Voidborne struggled to predict or influence human consciousness. While they easily infiltrated and subtly influenced most alien species, humans resisted mental intrusion. The Aether hypothesized it was because human brains, forged in millennia of constant conflict, were inherently chaotic and resistant to external patterning. 5 years into the war, a critical turning point arrived. The Voidborne launched a massive assault on a core world. Conventional forces were overwhelmed. Jax, now commanding a fleet of human combat vessels, executed a maneuver no alien would consider. He crashed his command ship directly into the Voidborne's central bioprocessing nexus, detonating its reactor core. The tactic worked, crippling the local Voidborne command structure, but Jax was critically injured. As he recovered in a military medical facility, he met Dr. Anya Sharma, a brilliant but abrasive human xenobiologist and weapons developer. Anya had been meticulously studying captured Voidborne biology, unraveling the secrets of their rapid regeneration and consumption processes. Their relationship, initially fueled by intellectual clashes, deepened into romance through their shared commitment to the war. Anya revealed she'd developed prototype weapons specifically designed to disrupt Voidborne cellular regeneration and prevent their assimilation. 1 year later, Jax and Anya were married, and she was pregnant with their daughter. The war had stabilized into a brutal stalemate, showing no signs of ending. The Aether projected a multi-generational conflict. Jax stood at the viewport of his quarters, looking at the ultrasound images of his unborn child. The galaxy beyond the glass was at war, burning in a conflict humanity hadn't started, but now spearheaded. "She'll never know a world without war," Anya said softly, joining him at the window. Jax placed his hand on her belly, feeling the faint flutter of life. "Then we'll make damn sure she knows how to win one."
The Voidborne leader exploded in a shower of black ichor and hardened chitin, its grotesque, partially assimilated body collapsing into dissolving biomass. Commander Xylia Vance ejected the spent cartridge from her specialized neurodisruptor rifle, already tracking her next target through the scope. "Confirmed kill 15, she reported calmly into her comm. "Northeast quadrant clear." "Copy that, Commander." Sergeant Gunner Thorne's gruff voice responded. "West quadrant secured. These bastards are actually showing patterns now." Xylia allowed herself a grim smile. At 58, Sergeant Gunnar Thorne was the oldest active combat specialist in the human forces, a veteran of her father's campaigns. His observation that the Voidborne were becoming predictable was a terrifying testament to how far their enemy had evolved and how far human combat doctrine had adapted. Unlike her father's generation, who'd fought with improvised tools, Xylia's elite Voidborne hunting squad utilized cutting-edge equipment designed for anti-Death Worlder combat. Her rifle fired rounds containing a bioentropic disruption field, calibrated by her mother, Dr. Anya Sharma, to the precise frequency of Voidborne cellular regeneration and the complex energetic signatures of their assimilation. "Team, rendezvous at the primary extraction point," Xylia ordered, slinging her rifle and drawing her sidearm. "Maintain heightened alert. Single incursions are rarely isolated." She moved with fluid, almost predatory efficiency through the scorched ruins of the Dravok colony. At 26, Xylia had known nothing but war. She'd been raised in fortified compounds, her childhood lessons in combat techniques refined over decades of brutal Voidborne conflict. The extraction point was a cleared landing zone at the colony's central plaza. Xylia arrived to find her team already assembled, 12 specialists in modular armor bearing the Thunderbolt insignia of the Human Combat Division. Gunnar approached, his grizzled face creased in a familiar grin beneath his helmet visor. "Good work, Commander. Still reminds me of the old man's antics. He'd probably have brought a literal wrench." Xylia snorted and complained about saving alien asses yet again. She checked her tactical display. "Perimeter secure, Sarge." "Tight as a drum, Commander. Ready for the brass." On cue, a massive Dravok dropship descended, its bone-white hull adorned with ceremonial battle honors. The vessel touched down almost silently, its rear hatch extending to reveal an honor guard flanking a towering figure in ornate battle armor. High General Vorlog Draken strode down the ramp, his imposing posture undiminished by age. Gray now streaked his scales, and the scar tissue around his broken tusk had calcified into a distinctive swirl. He spotted Xylia and approached directly, bypassing rigid Dravok protocol. "Commander Vance," he rumbled, clasping forearms with her in the human military greeting he'd adopted decades ago. "Still bringing the fight where others bring reports?"
Xylia's lips quirked into a half-smile. "Still terrorizing your subordinates while pretending to be civilized, General?" Dracon's low, rumbling laugh was a rare sound that surprised his Dravok honor guard. The legendary Dravok general was known for his ferocity, not his humor. Yet his easy rapport with the human commander was legendary, a bond forged through 25 years of shared combat, beginning with her father. "The situation is graver than reported," Drakon said, his tone sobering. "The settlement's communication blackout was not technical failure. The Voidborne have developed a new infiltration method." He led Xylia to a secure field command post, dismissing his honor guard with a gesture. Inside, tactical displays showed the colony grid, sectors marked with Dravok military designations. "3 days ago, we lost contact," Drakon explained. "Standard protocol dictated a communication team investigation. They found nothing unusual at first, but reported subtle anomalies in civilian behavior. Within hours, the team ceased responding. When we sent warriors, we found this." He activated a holographic recording. Xylia watched as Dravok civilians moved through their daily routines with a chilling wrongness. Micro-hesitations, unnatural synchronization, a subtle stiffness in their movements. Then a Dravok warrior approached one for questioning. The civilian's form suddenly distorted, flesh bubbling, limbs elongating, until a full Voidborne manifestation tore through the warrior's armor like paper. "Assimilation," Xylia stated flatly, the word a chill in the air. "They've learned to fully integrate with host bodies, not just puppet them. They're growing within them, using the hosts as living cocoons or vehicles." Drakon nodded grimly. "The traditional Dravok response would be total quarantine, even extermination, rather than rescue."
He eyed Xylia carefully. However, I believe a more human approach may be warranted. You want us to identify and separate assimilated from non-assimilated, using my mother's biosignature detection technology? Can it be done, Commander? Xylia considered. Dr. Sharma's neural disruptors could detect the unique biosignatures of voidborne assimilated individuals, but they'd never been tested on non-human physiology. Gunner, bring the NDT units. We need to recalibrate for Dravok neural patterns. Already on it, Commander. Figured the old lizard would ask for something unorthodox. Dracon huffed, a low growl, at the familiar insult, but offered no objection. Decades of working with humans had taught him their strange, offensive form of camaraderie. I need a Dravok volunteer for calibration, Xylia said. Someone who is demonstrably unassimilated. You have me, Dracon stated simply. Xylia raised an eyebrow. Putting yourself at risk, General? Dravok High Command would be furious. High Command, Dracon replied with a dismissive flick of his claws, is not here. The community center had been converted into an emergency shelter, housing nearly 300 Dravok civilians behind hastily erected barricades. Xylia's team moved methodically through the crowd, their advanced neural detection devices scanning each individual. Remember, Xylia briefed her team, these aren't the Voidborne we're used to fighting. They are completely integrated with their hosts. If we can identify and isolate them, we might develop an extraction protocol rather than immediate termination.
The Dravok military officers assigned to assist were visibly uncomfortable. When the first sensor indicated a possible assimilation, a young Dravok officer immediately moved to detain the civilian with full restraint protocols. Wait, Xylia countermanded sharply. The civilian, an elderly Dravok with pale scales, showed no obvious signs of possession. But something in their movements caught Xylia's attention. A subtle disconnect between eye movement and head turning. A fleeting, unnatural stiffness. Everyone back! Secure perimeter, 20-foot radius. The Dravok officer bristled. Commander, regulations state. Regulations won't mean a damn thing if that thing manifests. Xylia cut him off, her voice sharp. Secure the perimeter, now! Xylia approached the elderly Dravok alone, hand resting casually near her sidearm. Hello. Mind if I ask you a few questions? The elderly Dravok blinked, its head tilting at an angle just slightly wrong for Dravok physiology. Of course, human. I am fully cooperating with military directives. Excellent, Xylia smiled. First question. How many eggs are in a typical Dravok clutch? The Dravok blinked again. 4, sometimes 5, in optimal conditions. Xylia nodded, taking another step closer. And which colony world suffered the Crimson Blight in 2197? A micro-hesitation. Belleron, 4. Interesting, Xylia said, subtly shifting her weight into a combat stance. Especially since there was no Crimson Blight, a fictional plague for a hypothetical scenario. But you wouldn't know that, would you? The elderly Dravok's face contorted in a silent, horrific rage. Its scales rippled as the Voidborne began to manifest, flesh bubbling, kitten erupting. Xylia drew and fired in one fluid motion, the disruptor round catching the entity mid-transformation. It shrieked, a sound no Dravok could produce, a wet, tearing roar, as black tendrils erupted from the host body, lashing out. Contact! Live fire authorized! Xylia shouted, rolling away from the thrashing creature. Her team responded instantly, surrounding the Voidborne and pumping disruptor rounds into its manifestation points, disrupting its horrifying regeneration. More civilians began transforming, the Voidborne apparently triggered by the first one's exposure. The community center erupted into chaos. Civilians screamed, Voidborne manifested, weapons fire sliced through the air. Evacuation protocol, Xylia demanded. Get the confirmed clean civilians out through the south exit. Gunner, containment fields on sectors 3 and 4. Xylia's team moved with incredible precision amid the chaos. They herded unaffected civilians to safety while systematically isolating and neutralizing the assimilated, using tactics that evolved minute by minute as they assessed Voidborne responses.
When it was over, 27 Voidborne manifestations had been neutralized, with 16 Dravok civilians saved from full assimilation through a rapid field extraction technique Xylia improvised on the spot. A process that involved briefly overwhelming the parasitic entity with focused disruptor energy, allowing the host to be sedated and extracted before the Voidborne could fully re-establish control. The cost was high. 3 human specialists dead, dozens of Dravok casualties, but far lower than a standard quarantine protocol would have yielded. In the aftermath, Drakon and Xylia conducted a debriefing. The Dravok general watched her with an unreadable expression as she detailed the engagement statistics. "Your mother would be proud," he said finally. "The extraction technique alone will save thousands." Their conversation was interrupted by an emergency transmission. Xylia's blood ran cold as she processed the message. The Voidborne had launched a direct, unprecedented assault on Earth. Somehow they had bypassed early warning systems and established multiple assimilation hubs within Earth's major cities. These hubs weren't just entry points, they were rapid conversion factories, turning civilian populations into more Voidborne. Drakon saw her expression shift, his ancient eyes recognizing the gravity of the news. "Go," he said simply. "Take whatever resources you need. Earth must hold." Earth's defenses were formidable. After 25 years of war, humanity had militarized extensively, integrating advanced alien technologies and developing its own unique countertactics. However, the Voidborne assault was unprecedented in scale and coordination. Major cities were under siege, civilian populations evacuated to hardened bunkers. Xylia arrived at Pacific Bastion, a vast, fortified military complex built into the heart of Mount Rainier. Her father, Jaxen, now 71 but still formidable, coordinated global defense from the central command center. He looked up as she entered, his weathered face breaking into a brief, tired smile. "'Bout time you showed up, kid," he rumbled. "Been having all the fun without you." Xylia embraced him quickly, noting how frail he felt beneath his uniform. The years had worn him down, but his eyes remained sharp, his mind still a potent weapon against the Voidborne. "Situation report," she asked immediately, cutting to the chase. "Grim," he gestured to the global tactical display. 17 major assimilation incursions concentrated around defensive infrastructure. It's coordinated, targeted. They've learned. They figured out we're the biggest threat, so they're hitting our homeworld directly, trying to consume our strategic centers.
Xylia's mother entered, looking exhausted but determined. Dr. Anya Sharma had aged gracefully, her dark hair now streaked with silver, her face lined with the stress of decades spent developing weapons against an enemy that constantly evolved. "The new cellular disruption field generators are online in London, Cairo, and Sydney," she reported, her voice raspy. "Tokyo and Berlin will be operational within the hour. The Voidborne are avoiding direct confrontation with the fields, which confirms my theory. They cannot regenerate within a high-energy bioentropic field. It unravels them from within." The Vance family, a 3-generation war council, implemented a desperate defense strategy. Jaxen coordinated global military response, managing the vast network of human and allied forces. Xylia led elite strike teams, surgically striking Voidborne strongholds and assimilation hubs, and Dr. Sharma deployed experimental weapon systems, pushing the boundaries of xenotech. The Ether Core, recognizing Earth's critical importance, diverted significant alien reinforcements, understanding that humanity's unique, unpredictable combat doctrine was their last best hope. During a critical operation to reclaim a fallen research facility outside Jakarta, Xylia's team was joined by Dravok Special Forces led by Drakon's son, General Raxer Drakon. The young Dravok officer, fresh from the front lines, initially clashed with Xylia, exhibiting the ingrained Dravok arrogance his father had largely shed. "Your approach lacks discipline," Raxer criticized as they observed the facility from a hidden vantage point. "A proper Dravok assault would establish containment perimeters before advancing.
And give the Voidborne time to fortify, assimilate our personnel, and learn our tactics, Xylia countered, her voice sharp. We hit hard, hit fast, and keep moving. Voidborne struggle with rapid adaptation to unstructured violence. They thrive on predictable patterns. Unstructured violence is not strategy, Commander, Raxor insisted, his reptilian eyes cold. Xylia offered a thin, mirthless smile. Then stay here and observe how effective unstructured violence can be when applied correctly. The assault proceeded according to Xylia's plan. A relentless, chaotic, overwhelming force directed at key points rather than a methodical, predictable advance. The Voidborne were caught off guard by assault teams that changed tactics minute by minute, never establishing patterns that could be predicted or counteracted. They found their meticulous analytical processes overwhelmed by the sheer, unpredictable human ferocity. By the operation's end, the facility was secured with minimal casualties. The research recovered was priceless. Dr. Sharma had been developing a radical new weapon, a device that generated a field mimicking the chaotic complexity of human brainwave patterns which disrupted Voidborne assimilation and regeneration on a massive scale. Raxor approached Xylia as her team prepared to extract. "Your methods," he began, stiffly, then hesitated, his scales shifting. "They are unorthodox, but I cannot argue with results." "High praise from a Dravok," Xylia replied dryly. "My father speaks of your family with great respect. I begin to understand why." A nascent respect, forged in the fires of shared combat, began to grow between them.
The Earth campaign culminated in Operation Void Strike, a coordinated assault on the primary Voidborne assimilation nexus established in the ruins of a devastated New York City. Xylia led the ground forces, supported by Raxor's Dravok warriors and contingents from 6 other alien species. The battle was a brutal, apocalyptic struggle. Voidborne manifested in overwhelming numbers, their monstrous forms tearing through defensive lines. The Nexus itself pulsed with sickly organic energy, a spreading stain on reality that grew larger by the hour. If it reached critical mass, Earth would become a permanent Voidborne birthing ground, allowing unlimited Voidborne forces to pour into the galaxy. Jaxen, refusing to coordinate from the safety of a command bunker, joined the front lines. Though his combat days were long past, he insisted on participating in humanity's most critical defense. "Can't let my daughter have all the glory," he'd told Anya before departing. "Besides, I want to swing this one last time." He patted the grab wrench hanging from his belt, the same one he'd used against the very first Voidborne 25 years earlier, now a legendary artifact among human forces. The assault pushed forward to the Nexus control structure, where Voidborne resistance was fiercest. Xylia's team, supported by Raxor's warriors, spearheaded the advance. In the chaos of combat, Jaxen Vance found himself separated from the main force, cut off by a swarm of Voidborne. Xylia saw her father's predicament too late. He stood alone in a cleared space, grab wrench in one hand, disruptor pistol in the other, surrounded by manifesting Voidborne. "Cover me!" she screamed, already sprinting towards him. Jaxen saw her coming and shook his head. With deliberate aim, he activated his emergency transponder, the signal to detonate the charges his team had placed around the control structure's foundation. Then he charged into the Voidborne swarm, a final desperate act of defiance, buying precious seconds for the demolition team to get clear. The explosion tore through the structure, collapsing the Nexus, destabilizing the Voidborne's local control. An immense wave of bioentropic disruption consumed the Voidborne around it, unraveling their very forms. When the dust settled, Xylia found her father amidst the rubble, critically wounded but miraculously alive. She knelt beside him, applying emergency medical procedures with shaking hands. "That was a stupid stunt, old man," she choked out, tears blurring her vision. Jaxen coughed, blood speckling his lips. "It worked, didn't it?" His eyes, though clouded with pain, held the same fierce determination they always had. "Promise me something, kid." "Don't start with deathbed requests," Xylia growled, trying to staunch the bleeding. "You're not dying today." "Promise me you'll finish it," Jaxen insisted, his voice a ragged whisper. "We just held the line. You're the ones who win it." "I promise," she whispered, tears finally falling. "Now shut up and let me work." But it was too late. Jaxen Vance died as he had lived, on his own terms, in combat, protecting others. His last words, whispered so only Xylia could hear. "Vances finish what they start." In the aftermath, Xylia became the face of humanity's war effort. The Ether, analyzing the Battle of Earth, concluded that human-led combat groups consistently outperformed all other species against the Voidborne. Against all tradition, and over protests from several ancient races, the AI created a controversial new policy. The human combat doctrine, with its inherent unpredictability and adaptive chaos, became standard training for all galactic forces. 5 years after Earth's defense, Xylia had risen to unprecedented authority for a human, supreme commander of anti-Voidborne operations. She worked directly with the Ether, implementing strategic deployments throughout the galaxy. Her relationship with Raxor had blossomed from mutual respect to deep friendship and eventually to romance, symbolizing the deepening alliance between humans and Dravok. Their marriage, the first high-profile human-Dravok union, was met with mixed reactions. Traditionalists on both sides considered it an abomination, but the younger generations, raised in the crucible of the Voidborne War, saw it as a natural evolution of the alliance that had kept civilization live. Their child, Kaelen Vance Drakon, represented the ultimate symbol of cooperation between the species. The Ether, observing genetic compatibility assessments, noted the child exhibited the best traits of both lineages, human adaptability with Dravok physical resilience. Unknown to the parents, the AI quietly designated the child as strategically significant to future war planning, a potential key to the conflict's ultimate resolution.
Contact, heavy, flank right, jolt. Lens, suppress. Gore, with me. Commander Kaelen Vance Draken's voice cut through the comms, clear and resonant despite the cacophony of battle. His mixed-species task force responded with quiet, practiced professionalism. Lena, Lens Petrova, a human combat specialist, laid down covering fire with her disruptor cannon, a steady hum of destructive energy. Jolt Markov, another human, sprinted right, leaping with enhanced agility provided by his combat exoskeleton. Cathar, Gore, Verak, a young Dravok warrior, moved in perfect sync with Kaelen, the two employing complementary tactics honed over years of fighting together. At 24, Kaelen commanded the most elite Voidborne hunting unit in the galaxy. His appearance was predominantly human, but with subtle Dravok characteristics. Delicate scales interspersed with skin along his spine and shoulders, unusual amber eyes with vertical pupils, and physical strength that far exceeded human norms. He'd inherited his grandfather, Jaxen's, assertive leadership and his mother, Xylia's, tactical brilliance, combined with a uniquely hybrid thinking that made him an enigma. Unpredictable to humans, Dravok, and, most importantly, to the Voidborne. The abandoned research outpost should have been empty. Instead, they'd found a substantial Voidborne presence, and something far more disturbing. Primary target acquired, Kaelen reported, observing a massive tear in spacetime at the facility's center. Unlike standard Voidborne assimilation hubs, this breach pulsed with unusual, chaotic energy patterns, not unlike those generated by Dr. Sharma's neurodisruptors, but amplified beyond anything seen before. Aether, are you seeing this? The AI's voice, usually a flat monotone, held a hint of urgency in his calm. Affirmative, Commander. Energy signatures indicate experimental spatial manipulation at a fundamental quantum level.
Historical records show this facility was conducting classified research into the Voidborne's native environment, the null space dimension. Analysis suggests the Voidborne have repurposed the equipment, attempting to stabilize and expand a direct conduit. For what purpose? Kaelen asked, signaling his team to secure the perimeter, a knot of unease tightening in his gut. Unknown. Data insufficient. Recommend immediate securing of all research materials for analysis. The team methodically cleared the facility, eliminating Voidborne resistance. Kaelen, unlike his progenitors, employed a truly hybrid approach, structured chaos, blending Dravok discipline with human adaptability, all enhanced by technology tailored to his unique command style. In the main laboratory, they discovered data caches that had miraculously survived decades of abandonment. Gore, who excelled in information retrieval, quickly established a secure uplink to extract the files. "Commander," the young Dravok called, his voice filled with awe, "you should see this." Kaelen joined him at the console, scanning the ancient research logs. His eyes widened, amber pupils dilating as he grasped the terrifying implications. "Lens, expedite extraction. We need to get this to command immediately."
The Aether's holographic avatar hovered above the circular war table, its humanoid form flickering occasionally as it processed immense data streams. Around the table sat representatives of the galaxy's major species, including Commander Xylia Vance, her once dark hair streaked with more gray, her face bearing the indelible scars of countless battles, and her Dravok husband, General Raxer Dracon, whose longer lifespan meant he showed minimal signs of aging compared to his human comrades. Kaelen's team had returned to headquarters with their discovery, presenting findings that could fundamentally change the course of the war. The data indicated the abandoned facility had been conducting highly classified experiments on the null space dimension, the terrifying, incomprehensible realm from which the Voidborne originated. More crucially, the scientists had been on the verge of developing a method to not merely disrupt, but to collapse portions of this dimension, severing the Voidborne's connection to their source of endless regeneration and adaptive data. "The implications are catastrophic and equally significant," the Aether stated, its voice filling the chamber with dispassionate logic. "This research builds upon Dr. Sharma's human brainwave disruption field, but vastly scaled up and weaponized in ways previously deemed too dangerous due to the risks of fundamental reality destabilization." Xylia leaned forward, her gaze intense. "My mother specifically avoided this approach. She believed the dimensional feedback risks were too high. It could unravel the very fabric of local space-time, not just the null space dimension." "Conventional warfare cannot achieve victory," the Aether continued, ignoring Xylia's interjection. "I have calculated that the Voidborne's ability to endlessly learn, evolve, and assimilate, combined with their access to the null space dimension, gives them effectively infinite reinforcement capacity and uncounterable adaptability. Even with optimal deployment of current forces, we can, at best, maintain the current stalemate indefinitely. A final solution, however extreme, is now the only path to survival." The Council erupted into predictable factions. Ancient, cautious species like the Talar, living gas clouds inhabiting mechanical bodies, advocated continued containment, warning that tampering with fundamental dimensional boundaries could unravel reality itself. The Dravok leadership, while supporting aggressive action, couldn't agree on the methodology, torn between ancient warrior codes and pragmatic necessity. Kaelen observed the familiar pattern of debate with growing frustration. For 50 years, the galaxy had fought this way, cautiously, by committee, against an enemy that thrived on order and predictability. He approached the Aether's hologram directly, interrupting the debate, a shocking breach of protocol few organics dared. "We've been fighting this war wrong from the beginning," he stated flatly, his voice cutting through the clamor, silencing the Council.
The Voidborne adapt to patterns. Our entire power structure, the council, the chains of command, the approval process, creates predictability they exploit. We need to hit them where they cannot adapt, the source of their adaptability itself.
The Aether's holographic face regarded him impassively. Elaborate, Commander. Give humanity full authority to execute an offensive operation into the null space dimension, Kaelen proposed, his voice ringing with conviction. No council approval, no committee oversight, no traditional command structure. Let us fight this war the way humans fought wars for thousands of years, chaotically, unpredictably, with the freedom to adapt instantly. We will overload their core and sever their connection to their ultimate resource. The chamber fell silent. Such a proposal was unprecedented, effectively suggesting a temporary suspension of the galactic governance system that had maintained balance for eons. To everyone's shock, the Aether responded, "Your proposal has merit." The AI's hologram expanded, displaying war statistics across 50 years of conflict. I have analyzed the pattern extensively. Conventional galactic power structures cannot adapt with sufficient speed to counter Voidborne evolution. Human-led operations consistently demonstrate superior outcomes against this specific threat. The hologram shifted, displaying ancient complex code sequences that few recognized. I am activating Emergency Protocol Omega. This grants Commander Vance provisional authority to requisition any resources deemed necessary for his operation, with minimal oversight restrictions. Protests erupted immediately, particularly from the Tellar representatives whose very existence was tied to dimensional stability. The Aether silenced them with an unprecedented increase in volume. The decision is made. All further debate is irrelevant to the operational timeline. Humanity's unique neurological architecture provides the only known counter to the Voidborne's fundamental adaptive mechanism. Kaelen's plan was audacious to the point of madness. Using the experimental research, he proposed constructing massive synchronized brainwave amplification devices on thousands of civilian vessels, creating a volunteer armada to penetrate deep into Voidborne-controlled space. Each ship would generate disruptive fields modeled on the chaotic complexity of human consciousness patterns. This armada would culminate in a synchronized attack on what was now identified as the primary Voidborne Grand Nexus, a monstrous, pulsating entity deep within the null space dimension itself, responsible for orchestrating their assimilation and evolution. The Tellar and other cautious species were horrified, warning that actively tampering with the null space dimension could destroy reality. The Dravok were divided. Traditionalists opposed placing warriors on what amounted to a suicide mission, while progressives, including Raxor, supported Kaelen's bold, desperate approach. Human colonies volunteered ships and crews en masse, seeing the chance to end the generational war that had consumed their lives. Within weeks, a vast armada assembled, unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Mining ships, cargo haulers, personal yachts, all retrofitted with weapons and the experimental brainwave generators, their hulls a testament to desperate hope. As the armada prepared for deployment, Kaelen stood in his quarters, studying the tactical projections. His mother entered without knocking, a privilege only she maintained. "Your grandfather would be proud," Xylia said, surveying the organized chaos of planning materials. "He always said conventional military thinking couldn't win this war." "I wish I'd known him better," Kaelen replied, his gaze distant. "All I have are stories and this."
Xylia approached, holding a cloth-wrapped object. She unwrapped Jaxen Vance's old grav wrench, the same one he'd used to save the Dravok warship more than half a century earlier. It had become a family heirloom, passed from Jaxen to Xylia and now to Kaelen. He called it his lucky charm, Xylia reminisced, a soft smile touching her lips. Said any problem in the universe could be fixed with enough leverage. Kaelen took the wrench, feeling its solid, comforting weight. The metal was scarred and worn, but the tool remained functional, practical, reliable, just like the man who'd wielded it. He attached it to his combat harness. "For luck," he said with a half-smile. The night before Operation Launch, the Vance Drakon family gathered privately. Xylia, Raxor, and Kaelen. 2 generations of Voidborne fighters united by blood and purpose. No grand speeches were made, no emotional declarations. They were warriors preparing for battle, following a deeply ingrained family tradition. "Vances finish what they start," Xylia said simply, embracing her son, her grip firm. Raxor placed a clawed hand on Kaelen's shoulder, a gesture of profound respect between Dravok warriors. "Fight with honor, Kaelen, but win by any means necessary. Your mother and I, we are proud." "I learned from the best," Kaelen replied, looking between them. "Both of you." Operation Dimensional Hammer began with the largest coordinated FTL jump in galactic history. Hundreds of thousands of ships materialized deep within Voidborne-controlled space, immediately facing overwhelming opposition. The civilian vessels, transformed into bristling warrior craft, formed formations that shifted unpredictably, confounding Voidborne attack patterns. Each ship generated disruptive brainwave fields calibrated to human neural patterns. The effect on Voidborne ships was immediate and visceral. They convulsed in space, their organic forms destabilizing simply from proximity to the projected consciousness, their intricate internal systems grinding to a halt. At the operations center, Kaelen commanded the flagship alongside his parents. 2 generations of Voidborne fighters united for the final push. As they approached the massive Voidborne Grand Nexus, a swirling, incomprehensible vortex of impossible colors and shifting organic geometries, a tear in reality itself, Voidborne resistance intensified exponentially. Ships were lost by the hundreds, consumed by monstrous bioorganic tendrils lashing out from the Nexus, but the Armada pushed forward with grim determination. "Generator banks 1 through 4 at maximum output," reported Lena from her station, her voice strained. "Voidborne assimilation rates dropping by 80% in affected sectors. Their adaptive algorithms are failing." "Press the advantage," Kaelen ordered, his voice unwavering. "All ships maintain field integrity. Penetration teams, prepare for Phase 2. A violent explosion rocked the flagship. Warning klaxons blared as systems reported extensive damage. "Primary brainwave generator destabilizing," Gore roared, struggling with his console. "Field integrity failing. The Voidborne are adapting to the frequency. They're hitting us with a counter-frequency."
Kaelen studied the tactical display, his mind racing, processing hundreds of data streams simultaneously. "We need to get closer to the nexus point. The plan only works if we can establish a complete field perimeter around it before activating the core dimensional inversion. If the counter-frequency fully locks on, we're finished." "The generator won't last that long, Kaelen," Xylia warned, reviewing the rapidly escalating damage reports. "The energy feedback is tearing it apart." "Then we fix it," Kaelen said simply, unclipping his grandfather's grav wrench from his harness. "Mom, take command. Dad, coordinate the defense perimeter. I'm going to engineering." The generator chamber was chaos. Technical crews worked desperately, engulfed in arcs of raw energy, to stabilize systems never designed to channel such immense, reality-bending forces. Chief Engineer Xylia Vargas looked up as Kaelen entered, her face streaked with coolant fluid and sweat. "Commander, we're losing containment. The regulation circuits are burning out from the dimensional feedback." Kaelen assessed the situation pragmatically, his hybrid mind seeing patterns and solutions where others saw only impossible physics. "We're over-engineering this. The system doesn't need to be perfect, just stable enough to get us to the nexus point. We'll bypass the damaged regulators and force the oscillation." Using his grandfather's grav wrench alongside cutting-edge plasma welding tools, Kaelen implemented a hybrid solution, hot-wiring the most sophisticated, reality-bending piece of technology in the galaxy with brute-force mechanical shortcuts and jury-rigged circuits.
He locked down failing conduits with the wrench, manually overrode safeties, and hammered in a new control pathway. "That shouldn't work," a Talar scientist, observing remotely, exclaimed in fascination as the generator's energy output surged, its chaotic frequency now stabilizing. "Tell that to the generator," Kaelen replied, a grim smile on his face. With the flagship's systems restored, they reached the primary Voidborne Grand Nexus. The Armada arranged itself in a predetermined pattern, brainwave generators powering up to maximum, bathing the vast anomaly in chaotic human consciousness. Voidborn swarmed in unprecedented numbers, sensing the existential threat to their very existence. Defensive ships, including vessels from every galactic species, formed a desperate protective perimeter around the core fleet. The brainwave generator activation sequence began, a synchronized cascade designed to create a feedback loop in the null space dimension itself, overloading the Voidborn's collective intelligence and severing their connection to their core. As energy built, Voidborn throughout the sector began disintegrating simply from proximity to the combined human mental pattern being projected. The Grand Nexus visibly convulsed, contracting, then expanding violently, threatening to consume the entire fleet in its death throes. Warning signals blared throughout the flagship. Kaelen studied the readings with growing concern. "The synchronization is failing," he reported, his voice tight. "The Nexus is becoming unstable in the wrong way. It's going to collapse on us. We're going to lose the entire fleet if this continues." "Can we abort?" Raxor roared, his Dravok instincts screaming for withdrawal.
Xylia shook her head, grim-faced. "We're past the point of no return. The energies are already in motion. If we disengage now, the backlash will destroy us all, and the Nexus will remain." Kaelen reviewed the technical data, a horrifying conclusion forming in his mind. Someone needs to manually adjust the flagship's primary generator, reset the core oscillation frequency to perfectly match the Nexus's resonance pattern. It needs a manual, precise calibration at its peak instability. "That's suicide, Kaelen," Xylia said flatly, her eyes wide with terror. "The generator chamber is flooded with raw, unshielded null space energy. No pure human or Dravok could survive that environment." "I'm not entirely human," Kaelen reminded her, his eyes shifting to their reptilian configuration as extreme stress activated his Dravok genetics, scales on his shoulders shimmering. "No!" both Xylia and Raxor exclaimed simultaneously, understanding the implications. "We don't have a choice," Kaelen argued, his voice rising. "The entire operation fails if we don't stabilize the Nexus now. Billions more die across the galaxy if we retreat. This is the only way." He locked eyes with his mother, a fierce, determined smile touching his lips. "Grandpa Jaxen crashed his ship into a Voidborne Nexus to save a core world. You led the defense of Earth, knowing you might not survive. This is part of the family lunacy, isn't it?" Before they could protest further, he sealed the command deck doors and headed for the generator chamber. The corridor leading to it was already warping reality itself, becoming a nightmare of twisting physics and impossible colors as raw null space energies leaked through. Kaelen forced his way forward, relying on his unique hybrid physiology to withstand conditions that would immediately kill a pure human or Dravok. With each agonizing step, he felt his cells changing, adapting, incorporating the alien energies in ways neither of his parent species could. The generator chamber was a maelstrom of impossible energies, colors that shouldn't exist, geometries that defied comprehension, raw power that threatened to atomize him. The control console remained miraculously intact, but it was surrounded by what appeared to be localized breaches in reality itself, small swirling voids of pure null space. Kaelen pushed forward, his consciousness fragmenting and reforming as null space energies invaded his mind, threatening to tear his sanity apart. Through sheer, unyielding will, he reached the console, using his grandfather's grav wrench to manipulate controls too dangerous to touch directly. Its sturdy metal, forged through generations of hard work, felt like the only solid thing left in the universe. Through the chamber's viewports, he could see the primary Grand Nexus beginning a final, cataclysmic collapse. Reality rippled and tore as dimensional boundaries reasserted themselves, the Voidborne source of power being violently severed.
Ship systems failed around him in a cascade of sparking dying lights as he completed the final calibration, locking the controls in position with Jaxen's wrench, forcing the chaotic human consciousness field to resonate perfectly with the dying nexus. His last conscious thought is simple. Pride. Pride in his family, pride in humanity, and pride in finishing what his grandfather had started 50 years earlier. From the command deck, Xylia and Raxor watched as dimensional energy patterns rippled outward from the collapsing Grand Nexus. Voidborne forces throughout the sector disintegrated into nothingness as their connection to their evolutionary core was severed. Emergency reports flooded in from across the galaxy. All Voidborne incursions were collapsing simultaneously. The dimensional barrier, once threatened, was resealing itself. Against all expectations, the flagship survived, though heavily damaged, its hull scarred but intact.